What is going on, everyone? Hope you enjoyed week 2 of NFL action. We're here with my week 3 NFL power rankings about 12 hours later than I will normally be posting these throughout the season. Took an extended vacation to an extended weekend trip, I should say, to Dallas this weekend. Just got home this evening. So we're here. Time to recap an exciting week 2 of action. Always a fun week because the amount of information that we have has doubled now since week 1. So a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. If you could please hit that like button before we get started. I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. And let's get started. So at the bottom in the Williams watch tier, we've got 3 teams this week. And at the very bottom, the Houston Texans capturing the dead last spot, which unfortunately for them isn't even of benefit to them because for some reason they gave their pick to Arizona instead of Cleveland's pick. But I'm just watching this game back and I'm like, this team is just so far away, man. Like this week it was the defense, and we know this is D'Amico Ryan's unit, but he's just got a lot of work to do there, man. They were getting carved up, whether it was rookie Anthony Richardson or Gardner Minshew in there. They had no answers to the Colts offense. They just have so much work to do. They got offensive line injuries. They don't have any semblance of a run game. Just a long way to go. I think this is the worst team in the NFL right now, though it's close. I've got the Chicago Bears dropping down another spot. Their catastrophic start to their season continues. Justin Fields alone continues to struggle to see the field, but a defense that just lacks talent because they've been busy giving Justin Fields as much talent as he needs, which apparently that has no limit. This team just is a mess all around. It's not all about Fields. The coaching hasn't been great. I issued in a YouTube short a lot of my frustrations towards this front office. It's just been all around bad news Bears. And then I have the Arizona Cardinals at number 30, no longer the last ranked team here. And you know what? Honestly, good for them. I did not think we'd be sitting here in week 2 with Kyler Murray still on the PUP list, and we aren't ranking the Arizona Cardinals dead last. Good for them. They are playing hard for Jonathan Gannon. I think they're doing some fun stuff on defense. This week, I thought they did a lot of fun stuff offensively, too. Josh Dobbs doesn't look horrible inside this offense. They got some fun playmakers out there like Trey McBride, Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore. This team is doing some good stuff. That's all I can really say right now. Now, a team that isn't so much doing a lot of good stuff is the Carolina Panthers, who are going to kick off my spoiler alert tier. Teams that aren't very good, but on a given week might be able to put together an effort to beat a lot of good teams in the league. But yeah, the Panthers just offensively have no identity right now. And obviously Bryce Young isn't playing as well as you would hope the number 1 pick would come into the league, but just they aren't getting receivers open, whether that's a talent issue or a Frank Reich issue. I'm going to be revisiting the All-22 this week to try and get some answers as to what is really going on in Carolina, but whatever it is, on the surface level, it is not good. I still think they do some nice stuff defensively. That's really why they aren't in the Williams watch tier quite yet. You know, Brian Burns looks great. They do some good stuff on that side of the ball with the Zero Everose unit. So that's the one thing holding this team in a competitive range at the moment. Then we have the Denver Broncos, who blew a 21-3 mid-game lead this week. I just don't get it with this team. They can't put any sort of consistency together. The 2 turnovers in the middle of this game, just 2 more mental mistakes, a fumble by Russell Wilson, a miscommunication leads to an interception. I just, whether it's Sean Payton, whether it's Nathaniel Hackett, they just can't put things together on that side of the ball. Yeah, I'm just not impressed by the Denver Broncos. Likewise with the Las Vegas Raiders, who beat the Broncos in week 1. This team just turned off in the second quarter against the Bills. They could not move the ball offensively. This looked much more this week like that defense that is capable of getting shredded week in, week out. Where is Tyree Wilson to be found? The top 10 draft pick. It was really rough to try and get through that Raiders game this week. They were off to a good start, and then the gas just, they ran out of gas, basically, against a good Bills team. Then the Indianapolis Colts, moving up 2 spots this week, took care of business against the Texans. Really an impressive week for the Colts. I mean, you could feel Shane Steichen's impact on this game. dialing things up with Anthony Richardson's legs early in the game. Richardson leaves with a concussion, which, by the way, I love what I'm seeing from Anthony Richardson. He looks awesome, but he's got to do a better job protecting himself, or we're going to keep getting him pulled out of games. That's 2 weeks in a row that he wasn't able to finish the game because he's taking hits. But you love what you're seeing there when Richardson's in the game. But even then, Minshew comes in, who's familiar with Steichen's offense, and there's open receivers everywhere. The run game looked good. Minshew's hitting guys in stride. I love how this run defense has started the season with that front six, that front seven unit that's really an underrated group. So, it was just the Texans. I want to pump the brakes a little bit, but I did like what I saw this week from the Colts, moving up 2 spots. Then the New York Giants. This is essentially, last week we didn't move them too much because it was such a weird game against Dallas with the weather and how that game started. And I know they ultimately won this game against Arizona, but you got to walk away from this game more concerned than anything. The defense has been horrible. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. And then offensively, they turned it on late against a, basically practice squad defense in Arizona. But they also lose Saquon Barkley in this game, who was the majority of their offense in that comeback. Daniel Jones, good job leading the comeback. Good for you. But this team has a lot of issues. They definitely look a lot more like that team we maybe thought they would be last year than the team that they finished the season as last year. So I still have a lot of confidence in Brian Daboll. I think they can, straighten some things out and get this season back on track. But until I see some consistency and something to count on for this team, I don't think this is a good football team. Then we have the Washington Commanders, and this is a very difficult team to know what to think of. Number one, you have a quarterback that I feel like everybody else, like I'm enjoying watching Sam Howell. It's been an enjoyable experience so far. There's been a lot of exciting plays and good throws from him. There's also been many moments where it's like, yep, he's a young quarterback. He's making some mistakes. It's like we're just kind of along for the ride there, but it does lead to some questionable, consistency when it comes to the passing game. I don't love their offensive line either, but the run game looked really good. I mean, Brian Robinson showed some juice, man, more than I even thought he had. And then defensively, another unit that I don't fully know what to think of. Like, they have this great defensive line, yet they're getting lit up by the Broncos. So I just don't trust this defense to be that dominant unit that they're capable of. But another team like the Giants that I'm curious to see kind of where these next few weeks go, and do they climb up towards more of a middle ranking team. They've beaten the Broncos barely and the Cardinals barely. We got to see more, I think, from this Commanders team, but hey, 2-0 is 2-0. Now, before we get to our next tier, I got to tell you guys about today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. You've all seen the screenshots going around on X right now. Everybody sharing and playing their pick'em lineups, and Underdog has changed the game with this pick'em contest. You're selecting anything from 2 to 5 players, selecting higher or lower on player stats, and you can get payouts on your fantasy slips up to 20 times your money. These are small entries that get you totally dialed into any given football contest. I swear by Underdog Fantasy Pick'em contests. I've been doing them every single day there's been football this year, and I know you guys will love them too. And right now, if you sign up using promo code TFG, not only will you support my channel, but they will match up to $100 on your first deposit. That is well over a season's worth of Pick'em entries. So head over to Underdog Fantasy, sign up using promo code TFG, or just follow the link down below, and good luck. But now we have a massive cluster that I really struggled to separate here this week. I'm just going to call this the NFL middle class, and a lot of teams that we're still collecting a lot of information on, I think. But the Tampa Bay Bucks at number 23, they climbed to 2-0 this week, and they're just a really scrappy, solid team. I feel pretty good about what that defense is under Todd Bowles, obviously, but Baker's playing okay. He's protecting the ball for the most part. He's making some throws. Hasn't been perfect, but yeah, I mean, this team just kind of works, and they stay around games, and so far it's led to them winning. some close games. We'll see how that works when you're not playing the Vikings and Bears every week. But hey, 2-0 is 2-0, like we said. Then I've got the LA Rams climbing up another spot here. I thought they held their own against the Niners, man. And if a couple unfortunate turnovers don't go the way they did in this game, where a ball pops off of Kyron Williams' hands for a huge interception in this game, a frustrating interception from Stafford where Van Jefferson didn't exactly go where he thought he would on the route. That was really the difference in this game, taking on the Niners essentially in a home game for the Niners because they can't seem to get Rams fans in the stands for that matchup. But ultimately, with Puka and Tutu and Stafford playing like this, the Rams are a really solid football team hanging around. No one's going to want to play these guys. Then we got the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are going to stay put this week at number 21. Some big defensive turnovers that we know they're capable of last week helped them get that win against the Browns. But at the end of the day, I need to see more from this offense. Need to see more of a run game. Need to see Kenny Pickett be more reliable with the football. You're not going to get 2 defensive touchdowns every week. It's just not going to happen. And as we saw week 1, this offense has some pretty frustrating lows. So we're going to keep them at 21. I don't think the Steelers are necessarily anything different than I thought they were. They've just had 2 very polarizing games so far. Then I have the Green Bay Packers at number 20. They're going to drop down 2 spots this week, but this to me did feel like one of those games where if there's ever a good loss that's easy to swallow, I think that's this for Green Bay. Now they are going to move down to a couple of teams winning games are going to climb over them, but in a game where you don't have arguably your 3 best offensive players, Christian Watson, Aaron Jones, and David Bakhtiari, Jordan Love looked fantastic, getting the ball out, extending plays when he needed to. And a lot of these young playmakers, guys like Dobbs and Jaden Reed and Musgrave, look really good. Now, it's not all perfect. Joe Barry doing his Joe Barry thing. Yet again, this team just could not stop the run. Barry with some horrible defensive calls down the stretch. And additionally, they have an A.J. Dillon problem. He looks like he's stuck in quicksand every carry. I just don't really see it at this point for him. So they got to get Aaron Jones back there to have some semblance of a run game to support Jordan Love. Definitely some good, some bad this week. Frustrating that they couldn't seal the deal after outplaying the Falcons for the majority of the game. But I think if you gave Packers fans this script for the first 2 weeks, knowing the injuries that they'd go through, and you walked out of this 1-1 getting to play your first home game this week where Jordan Love's looking pretty good, you're feeling pretty good given where expectations were for the Packers. Then the Tennessee Titans, that's more like it. They pick up a huge win this week against the Chargers. And, that's more of what the Titans team that I expected to see would look like, where they have a super feisty defense, Jeffrey Simmons taking over in the middle of the field, a team that's capable of closing out close games, and then getting some of those chunk plays going this week with guys like Treylon Burks and some good play calling. Big Derrick Henry runs, like getting enough offensively, which they weren't able to get against the Saints the week before. Ryan Tannehill, most importantly here, back to looking like a solid to good NFL quarterback. Nothing special, but as long as he isn't the guy that was in New Orleans last week, this Titans team can hang in there against anybody, just as they did this week against the Chargers. So a get-right game for the Titans in their home opener. And then I've got the New York Jets also dropping down a tier again this week. So we dropped them a tier last week after beating the Bills, but suffering that Aaron Rodgers injury. And now we really got to see what the floor of this team can look like as they lose to a Cowboys team that definitely had their number. We knew going in that was going to be a really tough matchup for Zach Wilson, given how good that pass rush is. And it was about as bad as you could have expected for the Jets. I do think in more of their games going forward, they'll have more of a run game. The defense will be able to keep things a little bit more contained, and this team will be more competitive than they were this week. But we obviously saw just how low that floor for this offense can be with Zach Wilson. Though he moved around and did some stuff with his feet. He made a couple throws. I really don't want to say anything too positive about Zach Wilson, but let's just see what he looks like against not the best defense in the NFL before we drop them into like the 20s as a team, because this team does still have a lot of good things working for them. Garrett Wilson was special again this week. That defense we know can be special. We think this run game can be a lot better than they were this week. So really tough matchup, but they're going to have to play better to avoid this plummet in the rankings that they're witnessing here, starting the year up at number 6. Then I've got the Minnesota Vikings, and they are going to drop down a tier into the middle class. They're going to lose 2 spots in the rankings, and they obviously have concerns, right? They have huge issues in the secondary. Like, I don't even know what a Caleb Evans was looking at times. And you're talking about a game where Metellus, their third safety, goes down, and their first-round pick from a year ago, Lewis Seen, isn't even in the game. He's not even their third-string safety. Andrew Booth, not out there either. Like, they have a huge lack of talent in the secondary that is going to expose them to some big plays like we saw in that Eagles game. But I do think they're doing some good stuff defensively up front with Brian Flores, and they're playing fast in that part of the game. And honestly, offensively, they looked pretty good despite all the offensive line issues, at least in the passing game. I mean, Justin Jefferson is unguardable. And if the Vikings don't fumble the ball 4 times, they probably beat the Eagles on Thursday Night Football, and that team's been their freaking kryptonite. So I really don't think it was all bad for the Vikings this week. They also just signed the guard Dalton Reisner, which should patch up some of those O-line issues. I think a lot of people are going to be eager to write off the Vikings, but it wasn't the worst week you could have drawn up, given their opponent and given the rest of the division lost this week. So I'm not writing them off quite yet, though obviously dropping down a tier in 2 spots. There are some concerns there, to say the least. Then we have the New Orleans Saints at 16, moving up 4 spots. Another team that's shown a lot of good stuff. Like, I'm really impressed with how well this defensive line has started the season. You look at a guy like Carl Granderson, really, I'm not going to say coming out of nowhere, because that's someone I've talked about on this channel as being an underrated player. But in the eyes of many, you know, that was supposed to be a huge loss going from Davenport to Granderson, and Granderson's been pretty sweet there. So, you know, the D-line, the secondary, these guys just locked down the Panthers there. So this defense has really impressed me. They've been better than I expected them to be to start the year. Granted, it was against the Titans and the Panthers. They get Jordan Love this week. They haven't exactly been tested at a high level yet, but given who they've played, they've done a dominant job. Offensively, it's very hit or miss. Like, they don't have too much of a run game right now. Their passing game is just explosive plays to these insane receivers, right? But that's somewhat sustainable. You got Carr, who does throw a good deep ball, and Shaheed's awesome, Olave's awesome, Michael Thomas is still healthy. Like, they got players down the field, and they've gotten just enough chunk plays to put up points. But we have seen some ugly moments as well with a lack of an offensive line and Derek Carr being a guy that needs good protection. So I'm impressed by a lot of the stuff they've done. I think they have a lot of stuff to clean up before they're like a real playoff team, but they've taken care of business, deserve their credit. Then the Atlanta Falcons at number 15. I really struggled with whether to put them in the playoff hopefuls tier, which is our next tier, or to keep them here at 15. Ultimately, the first half that we saw from Desmond Ridder is what made me decide to keep them in the middle class for now. I mean, he is not a trustworthy drop back passer, but when Arthur Smith is cooking like this, and this was arguably the best game Arthur Smith has coached so far, really revealing his offensive genius in terms of, you know, the rhythm of the game, the play calling, having all these different wrinkles that he brought in on countless critical downs, you know, whether it's the 4th down toss play to Bijan Robinson, running a read option on a 4th down by the goal line, the flea flicker thing that they ran. They had creative wrinkles. They had a great rhythm to the game. I thought his usage of Bijan Robinson was much, much better this week, and God, Bijan is a freaking difference maker, man. They might be an 0-2 football team without Bijan, and I can almost say for certain they don't win this game against Green Bay without Bijan. It's actually Bijan. I got to get used to saying that after a long draft cycle, but it was a draft cycle where I said all of the hype about Bijan Robinson. I said, this is the highest draft grade I've ever given to a player. I said my pro comp for him is LaDainian Tomlinson, which I don't give a lot of Hall of Fame comps to guys. I did for Bijan. I also said he's more likely to finish with 2,000 rushing yards than he is 1,000. So I can't really say he's more than advertised, because I did advertise him to be potentially the best running back in the NFL out the gate, and that's what we're seeing. He is insane. Now, he did face a Joe Barry run defense, so take that with a grain of salt, but Falcons have a lot of stuff going for them. I don't love their defense. I don't love their front four. I do think A.J. Terrell is bouncing back early with a dominant number one corner season, just as he did a couple years ago, so that's good. We also saw what Jesse Bates did last week, so this is definitely some good for the Falcons. Some stuff, though, that, like, man, if you can slow down the run, which is easier said than done, and you get Desmond Ridder into third down, he's entirely unpredictable right now. So, he had 2 drop picks in this game, too, that would have completely swung the course of the game. Great start for the Falcons. Then we've got into the top 14, the playoff hopefuls. And you'll notice we have not discussed the 0-2 New England Patriots yet, who have played the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1, and they played them really tough, arguably outplayed the Eagles in week 1, if not for a sloppy start. And they had another great game against the Dolphins that they fell short against a great football team. But, they've played about as good as any 0-2 team could. I think the offense is doing a pretty good job with Mac Jones and that group. The run game's been very solid. And defensively, they did a great job against the Dolphins. You hold Tua and those guys to 24 points, keeping Tyreek Hill under wraps with the different safety rotations that they have. That pass rush is nasty. I feel good about this Patriots team, man. I think they're a good football team. They've just had some tough losses against great teams. So I'm going to keep them in the playoff hopefuls tier, but they do have to start winning some games for sure. Then the Seattle Seahawks, huge bounce back week for them. I mean, the offense just opened back up, right? You got Geno slinging the ball down the field. DK Metcalf made some incredible catches in this game. And then they just have all these different diversity of weapons. I mean, Tyler Lockett gets the big touchdown for the win in this game. Smith and Jigba was a nuisance underneath at times. But, man, these running backs, Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, had a nice run in this game. And then I love what they're doing with these tight ends. My dude Colby Parkinson is just the 7th option in this offense. He gets lost and makes plays down the field. Noah Fant was big in this game. Disley was big in this game. So they just really are mixing things up. Really like what they're doing on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I really don't trust them. And it's not like that front four really did anything to impress me this week. But you got a great offense like that. It's going to keep you in any game, just as we saw this week in Detroit, who are going to stay put after the loss. I think a lot of Lions fans are going to, wait for me to come out with my I told you so moment. I mean, not really. I mean, this is who I think the Lions are. My biggest question on them has been defense. Their defense did not play well. Really across the board. They had issues in the secondary with their front four. They got lit up. There's no way around it. Offensively, though, I thought they were the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff made some throws, left a little bit to be desired. Kind of an ugly interception in this game. Also didn't help that they were out Taylor Decker, their offensive tackle. David Montgomery gets hurt in this game as well. Another week where Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't really much of a factor on the ground. So we'll see what their run game looks like without Montgomery for a few weeks. But ultimately, this feels like the right spot for Detroit for me, is somewhere in that 12-16 range, a really good, sound football team, but not a whole lot of overwhelmingly great aspects of their football team. And right now, they've won one close game and lost another close game. But they're staying put at number 12. Then at number 11, I have the Los Angeles Chargers dropping down a tier outside of the Super Bowl hopeful tier into the playoff hopefuls tier. I mean, do we have any trust at all that a Brandon Staley coach team can seriously go on a Super Bowl run? I mean, these problems are the same problems that have been here since Staley was hired. He's got to be the coach on the hottest of seats, giving up big plays to a Titans offense that looked dead in the water last week. And part of it coming with like stupid mistakes on the defensive side of the ball, the inability to close out a game late, the lack of physicality across the board for this team, getting predictably punched in the mouth by a physical Titans team. We know the offense has talent. I like what they're doing on that side of the ball. But how frustrating is it that we do this every single year with the LA Chargers? But next up, we have our Super Bowl hopefuls tier. And that's going to start with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are going to keep their number 10 spot here. Obviously, a disappointing loss against the Chiefs. On one hand, their defense stepped up and held up their end of the bargain against Patrick Mahomes. But offensively, they were just a little bit off. Just missed on a few throws here and there that would have been, difference makers in this game. Just kind of a little bit of a pump the brakes, call it a buzzkill week for the Jags, having an opportunity to make a statement against the Chiefs, and they certainly didn't make a statement. I know their offense is better than 9 points, and they'll be better moving forward. But yeah, definitely an man week for the Jags, but nothing I'm terribly worried about given where we had them ranked already. Then the Bengals. This is really interesting. I mean, what a catastrophic start. And last week we were willing to say, okay, it's week 1. Joe Burrow didn't really practice, still trying to recover from the ankle that or the calf. I think most of us at least assumed that was going to heal up pretty quick and this offense would kind of take off and start playing well. And it was really tough to watch against the Ravens. They're really struggling to push the ball downfield. Joe Mixon looks slow. They don't have much of a run game. Just not, they're not very explosive. I mean, they had some great completions to T. Higgins, and it wasn't all bad. I still, in the back of my mind, feel like they're going to turn this thing around and get things straight. But based on what we've seen for 2 weeks now, and by the way, their defense just is very average right now. They're not doing a whole lot of difference-making stuff on that side of the ball. They need that baseline of the offense to keep them off the field and keep these games close. But yeah, I don't really know what to do with the Bengals right now. And we don't know if Joe Burrow is going to play this week. It really is a rough start for my Super Bowl pick, which could go south in a hurry here. So I'm worried about the Bengals. They're dropping out of my Super Bowl favorites tier. And they got to get back to the drawing board with this offense and figure out how to make this machine start moving a little bit better. Then the Cleveland Browns are almost by default here going to keep their number 8 spot, as I still think they're a better team than the Bengals, who they slaughtered last week. Obviously, the Jags and the Chargers and the Lions all lost, so not really a whole lot of room for them to drop. But this was a frustrating week for the Browns, especially in the offensive side of the ball. Number 1, Deshaun Watson, not playing well. That's the worst case scenario for the Browns. It was really, he's got to look better for this to be a Super Bowl team potentially. And it's just not off to a good start there. But they also lose Nick Chubb for the season, which is maybe even a bigger deal. Because if Watson's struggling, at least they had the foundations of that incredible run game with Nick Chubb. And I liked a lot of the stuff we saw from Ford. We're going to get a chance to see Pierre Strong, who I really liked. I still think they can have a solid run game, but it's not going to be what they had with Nick Chubb. So even more pressure getting put on Watson. But the defense looks pretty damn good still. So I'm not going to overreact to this loss where they did have 2 turnovers that were, pick six and a fumble 6. Definitely skewed this game dramatically. But obviously that a large part of that is just execution. So not overreacting to the Browns, but a frustrating week where if teams around them won, they would have fallen. But they are getting passed up by the Baltimore Ravens, who I'm excited to rave about here. I mean, this was like the dream Lamar Jackson in a spread offense vision, right? He was so good. This was the best game I've seen from Lamar as a real NFL-style quarterback. He's obviously had some incredible games in Greg Roman's offense, but this was the vision, right? A guy that, when he's comfortable in these dropbacks, has this natural balance of processing, decision-making, accuracy, where his vertical accuracy has been much better than he's shown throughout his career off to start. He's got playmakers that he can get the ball in the hands of. I mean, Zay Flowers made a vertical contested catch in this game with a dime from Lamar Jackson that made your jaw drop. Like, there's a lot of stuff to like with this offense. and just the balance of pocket presence. Sometimes he'll hang in the pocket when it's appropriate, climb to his second and third read, make tough throws over the middle of the field. Other times he was using his feet and scrambling and being a complete nuisance for the Bengals, who had no answers for Lamar in this game. So that's great. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball, where we know this Ravens defense is going to be pretty good, even if they're dealing with some injuries back there. So got to be about as optimistic as you could be with where the Ravens are at now, if you're a Ravens fan. I can't wait to see, extended iterations of this passing game. This was only the second week of this new look offense. Then I've got the Buffalo Bills getting a spot back after that catastrophic week one. The Raiders just didn't put up much of a fight in the second half of this game, but in large part that was because the Bills took the fight out of them. I got to give Josh Allen a ton of credit, coming back to earth a little bit, taking the underneath stuff, getting guys like Kincaid and James Cook going in the short game, so he's not in all these third down situations where he has to press. Now it's night and day going from at the Jets on Monday Night Football to at home at noon against the Raiders defense that has no semblance of a pass rush. So I don't want to give them too much credit for slaughtering a Raiders team that they were supposed to beat, but then the Miami Dolphins getting into the top 5. They are very close for me to getting into that Super Bowl favorites tier. Got to be impressed with what they've shown to start the season. Week 1, we saw what the offense could do. Week 2, a little bit more defense getting after it against the Patriots. And just such a balanced team. The one thing they've struggled with right now is run defense, which is strange, although not terribly surprising considering it's a Fangio scheme coming in. It's kind of a decision to not be a great run defense there. But, overall, I would say if they slaughter the Broncos this week and keep things up, I'll be ready to slide them up into that top tier. But kicking off our top tier with the number 4 spot is actually going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to get jumped here by a team that I think has just been more impressive in the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, it's not going to make Eagles fans very happy to hear, but I haven't walked away overwhelmed by the Eagles. Honestly, their passing game for the last 2 weeks has felt a little bit off, and I don't really know where to put the blame. A little bit of it is Steichen's gone. A little bit of it is Hurts just doesn't look as sharp in the passing game to me. Nothing like I'm terribly concerned about, but we do reach a point where we have to start evaluating what we're seeing, this year as opposed to what we saw last year. And they're really good, but they were an absolute machine that could beat you in every single way last year. So far, it's been much more of the ground game, which is great. But I just need to see a little bit more from the offense. And defensively, especially, they are not what they were last year. I should have started there. Honestly, the middle of the field, 2 weeks in a row, has been getting decimated, which we knew going into the year was going to be a potential weakness, where they lose all their linebackers, they lose all their safeties. They got to get some stuff cleaned up there. They're also dealing with cornerback injuries for the first time in a long time in Philadelphia. So they're still a top tier team, a Super Bowl favorite. But we're getting more nitpicky, right, when you get into these top ranked teams. And I have to explain to Eagles fans the reasons why they're dropping a little bit relative to the Dallas Cowboys, who really have been foolproof to start the year. You couldn't drop a better start for them. Dak Prescott's been awesome. I've loved everything I've seen from him in terms of the balance of the short game, the deep passing game, the play extension. It's all been really good for Dak, a quarterback that I've been critical of in years past. The defense, I think, is the best in the NFL right now. All of these additions are working together brilliantly. Micah Parsons is just absolutely unbelievable. And even DeMarcus Lawrence is balling out right now, too. It's just unfair how many different weapons they have defensively. And even their special teams have been great. So Cowboys look absolutely unstoppable right now. But there are still 2 teams ahead of them. I am going to put the Kansas City Chiefs ahead of them in a head-to-head matchup. I still wouldn't bet against Mahomes against that Cowboys team, especially when the Chiefs' defense is playing like this. I thought the defense played really well against Detroit. They really only gave up, 14 points in that matchup against a really good Lions offense. Obviously, the pick 6 from Kadarius Toney put another touchdown on the board, but then holding the Jags to 9. I mean, the coaching with Spags, all the continuity on that side of the ball, they kind of have a similar, mind melt situation going on that like Dallas with Dan Quinn's defense has, and the Niners defensive staff. Like, these guys really can make adjustments in game that tick you off. So, I mean, we're not used to a Patrick Mahomes-led team being a defensive-first team, but right now, that's what they've been. Getting Chris Jones back this week, being an absolute game wrecker, just elevated this group to new heights. But then, you have the best quarterback in the NFL on the other side of the ball, kind of, as we think, going to be getting better every week with these playmakers, getting Kelsey back, building better chemistry with guys like Tony and Sky Moore and Rashee Rice, the rookie. So still not going to drop the Chiefs after a big win in Jacksonville this week. And then the Niners are going to stay number 1. I thought the Rams played a great game against the Niners, and it still wasn't enough. And Purdy, by the way, did not play a great game. He missed 4 or 5 huge throws in this game that would have made this a blowout. But that's the thing, is as long as Purdy's just okay and avoids mistakes, and you'll live with some of the overthrows and underthrows that he has, but as long as he can keep this offense on time and let guys like Debo, who, this was a Debo week, last week was an Ayuk week, Christian McCaffrey's been unstoppable, Kittle has shown up, and then this defense, of course, that is just so good at getting after it and forcing turnovers. So I'm going to keep the Niners 1, but we do tiers for a reason. I think any of those top 3 could have a case for being number 1. I think the Eagles, with the product they've put on the field this year, they're a pretty clear 4 to me. You guys will just have to let me know, though, in the comments down below what you think of the rankings this week, where I went right, where I went wrong. I hope you guys are enjoying the power rankings. I do want to remind you that I'll be coming out with my weekly recaps where we go through every single game more in depth on the Fully Inflated Football podcast. So you can follow that through the link in the description below, or just search Fully Inflated Football podcast wherever you get your audio shows. We're also going to be going live on Wednesday night this week at 5 p.m. Central, 6 Eastern, with Matthew Collar for our live show Hot Routes, where we hit on 5 heavy-hitting topics every week for the NFL. Normally that show is on Tuesday, but pushed back a day this week. So still more content coming out this week. Going to start working on some other, later in the week stuff too, like film breakdowns, positional power rankings, that kind of good stuff. Studs and Duds is going to be back this year as well. So yeah, just a little content update there. Really hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please do hit that like button on the way out, and we'll see you soon. Peace out.